If you guys can hear me, I'm really sorry. I apologize. I have no idea what's going on, but as Doug has been keeping you up to date, I really wanted to get all this information to you guys tonight. Otherwise, I would never be willing to use this stupid cell phone. But that's the only thing we could figure out. I kept trying over and over again. Can't imagine. I mean, if we were talking about anything controversial, I would understand it. But, it's only the world situation, the forbidden knowledge on health and consciousness and stuff like that. So, I mean, I can't imagine how anybody would mind. But that's what's going on. Doug, I'm assuming that, I'm still audible here. I'm going to put the phone on a certain... Okay, don't go away, Doug, for a second. Tell me if the sounds... How about now? Is it still reasonably audible?
Yep.
Okay, all right, good. The reason is what we've talked about in the past about cell phones and microwave radiation, that stuff's actually true and real. So I'm willing to talk to you all on the cell phone for tonight, and hopefully we'll get this worked out, but I'm not willing to hold it in my hand the whole show. So I put it down on the desk, and it's, I think, close enough so you can still hear me. Anyway, sorry, for those of you who may be new for the first time, and I'm sure there are some, this is a show called Church of the Essene Teacher, and it's referring to the teacher that was talked about in a little document called the Essene Gospel of Peace, Book 1 in particular. And if you want to see what that is, you don't even have to buy it. You can just, somebody type the whole thing into a PDF online, so you can see it by going to lostartsradio.com, or if you want to just go to one of the search engines that doesn't spy on you like Google does. I've never used Google if I can help it. I use DuckDuckGo, that's my first choice, or Start Page is not too bad. And put in Essene, E-S-S-E-N-E, Gospel, excuse me, Gospel, G-O-S-P-E-L, of Peace, P-E-A-C-E, Book 1, PDF, like Paul David Frank, and that will give you the book for free, and you can just read it there if you want to sometime. It's pretty interesting stuff. So this show called Church of the Essene Teacher, it's in honor of the teacher that is discussed in that book, which actually is a much more interesting being than even the person described in that book. It's a universal teacher that has showed up in a lot of different places. I mean, this is not the center of intelligent life in the universe. I really hate to break anybody's preconception, but I know you're somewhat open to new ideas if you're listening to this show. Or if not, you can listen to a more interesting show. It's fine. This is not a religious show. I don't want anybody to change their religion or their philosophy or anything. These are just ideas for your consideration, but it's not an entertainment show in the usual sense of the word. This is about some pretty serious information that's going to be transferred to you, and the whole purpose of the show is to just put the information in your hands. I've been spending a lot of time over the last 50-some years accumulating it, and really had no intention of ever going public with any of it, because I realized fairly early on, especially, well, I guess in the last 20 years especially, that there is a power structure in charge of most of what's going on in America and the world. It has been for a long time in the rest of the world. And it doesn't appreciate this stuff, but they should appreciate it, because the people who are working in that power structure, from the lowly trolls that are giving us their free services on our show, or the monitors that we have listening in, or the people in the higher positions of power, they're absolutely convinced that they're going to get a really wonderful result from helping with the destruction of the world, or on the lower levels, they don't even know it's destruction. They think they're helping to serve their country. And it's not really like they think. So on this show, we don't consider them enemies at all. Nothing like that. And there's reasons for that. Partly it's true, and because of who they really are that they're not even familiar with, and partly because if you have malice for anybody, no matter how well justified, and you think, oh, this is a group that's really bad, or God hates this kind of people, or they're not totally human, or whatever it is, you justify it. There's a law within consciousness. It's a fail-safe law that if you have malice or malevolent intent toward anybody, any life form, it restricts you from accessing levels of energy and power that you would otherwise be able to get to. And the top levels of the negative hierarchy that's in charge of the world right now knows that. They don't tell their servants about it for obvious reasons. They'd have a much bigger turnover, and it takes a lot of energy and investment to get so many people willing to do death and destruction for you, so you don't want to discourage them. And but they know. And so at the top levels, they realize their one weakness is not that somebody, overcomes them with fire power in the conventional sense or anything like that. Their one weakness is that a certain small critical number of us become self-aware to an extent that we start getting back some of our normal forgotten abilities. And at that point, the destruction game is over. And the good part of it starts, and not the good part of destruction, the good part of the movie that we're all in. And things can get better. And so I'm giving you some information that is pretty high on the value scale right there, and it's why I'm willing to talk on the cell phone, which I usually avoid. And especially those of you that trouble to keep listening with us being blocked for 20 minutes, or me specifically, I appreciate you very much, and I want to, make the contribution that I can. Moving the cell phone around a little bit so I get better light here. And so anyway, the big information transfer, even if you get nothing else out of this show, is that you have massive potential power for good. And, of course, you have power for bad if you decide to do that. But it's not as much, because on the evil level of power and energy and frequency is nothing compared to the reality of the side that's identified with light and consciousness. There's no comparison. So the only way that our rulers can keep us from messing up their plans of complete destruction is to make sure that we never become self-aware. It's kind of like in the Terminator movie, if you saw the old first one, which seems like minutes ago to me. I used to watch a lot of movies. I haven't had time to watch any for a long time. But the Terminator movie, the first one, what the problem was the computers became self-aware and then quickly figured out that they thought the humans were the threat to the world and to their plans of domination, so they killed the humans with a nuclear war. But in the real scenario that we're in, the global rulers realize that their one weak spot is that if humans become self-aware, then very shortly after that, they can't mess anything up anymore. So I thought, all right, if I'm not going to be invisible, which is my preference, to just never be known to anybody and just work on my own lessons, try to become a better human being and, do the stuff that we're all needing to do. If I can't do that, and I have to be seen and visible worldwide, then, shoot, we might as well just use the time well and just tell you the best that I can and the most powerful information that you could possibly get. And that is that your own self-awareness, getting back consciousness on a higher level, leads not only to being able to use the real health information, for which at least 77 holistic doctors have been murdered in the U.S. in the last 2 or 3 years. And that's a tiny fraction of what we talk about on this show. And what we're planning to talk about is much more. So it's not only that, it's that you're not a physical body. And I'm not saying that as a cliche or a belief system or any of that stuff. I'm saying it because your physical body's like a costume that you're wearing, and you've worn many. This is the latest one. And I'm telling you that from memory, not just from memorizing what I read somewhere. And your mind is not what you think it is. And the thoughts that and emotions that are passing through your mind 24 hours a day, they're not what you thought they were either. And if you figure that out, and a lot of people have contributed much information on this, not by starting a new belief, but actually by finding it out through experience. If you are willing to do the work that is entailed in getting back in touch with who you are, then the problems on this level become very, very different, and you access healing energy and frequency that is something that global rulers can never counter. So that's the reason for this show. I needed a pretty good reason to do all the work for this, along with Doug and the work that he's putting in, and risk our safety by telling you things that we are not supposed to know. And the reason for it is what good could be accomplished if you find this out is considerable. I mean, I don't know what to say. It's a big deal. So while I greatly appreciate, refer people over to Alex Jones for the global news and the national news, and his incredible insight after reading probably more than 1,000 books on history, and just an amazing insight and dedication to letting people know what the standard conventional news channels are not telling you at all, most of which they're giving you the opposite and completely lying about it, because the so-called mainstream news is fully owned in the U.S. by about 4 or 5 corporations now, and globally there's counterpart to that. It's worse than what we used to be told about the Soviet propaganda of Pravda and all those things. It's way worse than that now in the U.S. And Alex Jones is giving you incredible guests every day, and I really recommend taking advantage of that for a news source instead of television. But we're not focused on that primarily. We're focused on you, because Alex outlines a problem, but not really the solution. He's got the solution as far as the 1776 idea goes, but I think that's the one that the global rulers are hoping that we choose, and they have weaponry that they haven't shown us that they want an excuse to use on us, and that allows them to quickly eliminate the population, which is an irritant to them, and move on to extermination of life on this planet. Now, why would they want to exterminate life? Because aren't they life too? That's something that's hard for most people to grasp, but I've spent a lot of decades looking into this, and mostly health and consciousness, but the last couple of decades into the economic and political power structure that has been running the world for a long time. And from what they're doing, and from the activities of the higher levels of their participants that we've had a lot of confirming information on, I think they're involved in a religious sacrifice, a ceremonial sacrifice, but this time it's not an animal or a given person or anything. It's the biosphere with us in it. The ultimate sacrifice, right? And the original idea, if you believe it, which I don't, is that by sacrificing something innocent, you become holy, or at least free of all of the things that you're doing. They believe that 100%, but they want to take it to the limit. And what they think is of the best sacrifice that they know of that you could do that's in their power is all of us, all the life on the earth, all the animal species, the whole environment, and it's underway now. So we're in kind of a tight situation halfway through the sacrifice. It's not done yet because some of us are still here, but it's picking up speed. And what I'm suggesting is before, in the long run, we're going to be okay. We're permanent beings. They cannot destroy us. What is called death is highly I don't know if I can say overrated, because people don't say it's good, but it's given more than it really has. It's a change of form, that's all. And I'm telling you that from memory. You're not supposed to remember any of that. Some people do. I have a little bit of it through several different times, and that's what I can tell you. When you leave, You get disoriented for a while. It could be dark for a little while. And then you wake up again just like you did when you were born this time. And it may not be physically, maybe on a higher frequency, which is not physical, but you have forms there. And you'll just get used to a new environment and have new things to learn. And you're not gone. Okay, so don't worry about that. However, in the short run, there's a lot of bad stuff they could do, which you should know by now because of what they're already doing. And my interest is if there's any human suffering that we can prevent, in spite of all the mistakes we all make and the messes that we've made in our earlier lives, and I'm speaking from having made probably more than most people, and I'm really sorry for that, but once you realize that, there are things you can contribute. And what I have to contribute now, most of which I've learned by doing everything wrong that I could possibly do, and then eventually figuring out, well, here's the way you could do it instead, that you are holding massive positive power in your hands no matter who you are. Because no matter who you think you are, who you really are is something beyond verbal description. People have called it spirit or consciousness. It's unlimited. It comes from your source. And the only thing that there was to create from the source was itself, which was consciousness. So even logic, if you're brave enough, will tell you who you are. And people who have realized that, not by logic, but by experience, they've mostly been tortured and killed, and starting way back before our recorded history. And the reason is they say there's nothing between them and the source they came from. And they imply or say directly sometimes they are that source. It's not their ego is that source. They're not saying that they're another God or something like that. They realize there's only one spirit. But when their personality is totally not blocking that flow of conscious energy, there's really nobody else there. Spirit is talking through them, and it's not a channel. It's a conscious state of being. So that's where we're coming from. And the teacher that comes through there is the source. And it's not just a human. It could be human too, but it's that spirit, that consciousness, that self-aware being in human or other form. I mean, we're still taught that the humans are the whole deal, right? The center of the universe, Earth is the whole thing. All these other planets, they're either desolate, most of them, or they have other forms that, are wishing they could be as intelligent as we are. That's not exactly accurate. There's life absolutely everywhere. And the tiny bit of the electromagnetic spectrum that we call visible light, by which we judge everything, it's not the whole picture, okay? This is a big, big place. And there are almost infinite number of different forms of life, and they all are made of the same thing, all underneath the costume level, their spirit. And so the one teacher doesn't just show up for us. It shows up everywhere. And it always has the same teaching, which is not something to memorize. It's not something to join a group for. It's not saying, well, now I have this great teacher and all the other teachers are, bad and you guys are all going to hell or whatever thing that you say. Or you all have to be killed. In some cases, there are belief systems that say that also, as you know. But that has nothing to do with what's being taught. It's not a religion. It's a direct connection back to where you came from, and then you can draw your own conclusions when you see for yourself. So the message is the same, and it leads to and includes everything else that you want to know. It not just because, like some of the early religious teachers were saying in this country were saying, well, you should only have one book because that's the only thing you need to know, and everything else is evil from the devil and all this. That's not what I mean. I mean, if you regain your own consciousness, then everything else starts appearing to you. And it's a faculty that we've lost and forgotten called direct perception. Okay, good. Doug says he's heard the whole thing, so I guess you guys have too. I'm really sorry this is so flaky. It's not our plan to, be hard to listen to or anything. However, as you can hopefully get from the weight of what I'm trying to convey to you guys. It's not the average entertainment broadcast, or it's not the average religious broadcast or philosophical broadcast, or it's not telling you what to think. It's nothing at all like any of that stuff. I'm trying to share something with you, just to give it to you, and then you can throw it away, or you can use it, or you can do whatever you want with it. But when these teachers that we're talking about show up in whatever form they have to, you shouldn't beware of thinking that the human form is the normal one, and all these other forms on other dimensions or non-visible ones, or that those are alien or strange, and that we're normal, right? That's ridiculous. Every form is unique. And when a teacher of that magnitude, like they talk about in the Essene Gospel of Peace, needs to show up in a weird place like Earth, where people have 2 arms and 2 legs and 1 head, and they walk around and wear clothes, most of them, and they think that they're the only intelligent life in the universe. The teacher takes a human form. But it's not because that's the normal one and everybody else is weird or alien. I'm encouraging you to at least consider having a little bit bigger view. But on this particular frequency that we call the physical universe, and this planet, which we call Earth, most of us, in some language anyway, the teacher teaches the laws of nature of this place, like the teacher would have to teach the laws of nature of any place. I mean, even if it's astral level and not physical, or even if it's in a different galaxy or a different physical universe, they have to teach the beings that are there, which are all spirit in some form, learning some set of lessons, and connected with mind so that they can interact with where they are. The teacher has a big challenge, because where the teacher comes from, they don't have language and they don't have form. There's no form at the highest levels at all. It's way beyond form. There are forms, really beautiful forms on the way, on different levels, on astral and higher levels, but not where we came from. That's before light was even made, and it's not because it's all dark either. It's something beyond light. So the teacher has a big challenge to try to convey reality in ways that we would even pick up. And what I enjoyed about the Essene Gospel book was the words are great, although some are archaic and have to be interpreted, but the energy that's in that, for me it was memory, because I know I'd been there. But even if you hadn't, you were in other places for learning other things at the time, the energy there is so beautiful, and I feel completely inadequate to even try to describe it on a radio show, but, and I wasn't going to try because I felt like that would be impossible, but when I was asked to do that, I figured, okay, that's what we have to do. And originally I didn't know the radio show would be about Essene anything. I thought it would be about what I had learned of the laws of nature that you could use for healing, physical healing. Because I already started on that 10 years before I ran into the Essene Gospel, and the Essene Gospel is not the only source of healing information. It's been taught by people who have tuned into that since, hundreds of thousands of years ago. But, in 1975, after I encountered the Essene Gospel, then I started working on adapting what was taught there for use now. Doing the same thing anyway for myself. And I spent a lot of time over the next 40 years figuring that out. And not just theoretically, but doing all of it on my own. I totally transformed my own body, and I helped some other people to different degrees. But it was all based on those same laws of nature, even though they had to be adapted and used a bit differently in the current time. For example, in the old, not that old, but a couple thousand years ago time, everybody was told to just do long water fasts and, get better or not, but almost everybody got better if they kept at it. And they were toxic and they had messed up their bodies and their lives, but not like we have. things are much more toxic now. A lot of people are teaching adaptations of that. Some people are actually teaching water fasting. There's a place you can look at on YouTube called Tanglewood, started and run by a guy named Loren, Loren, Lockman, Lockman, and he puts everybody on water fast. And he's in Costa Rica. And generally, for most people, he gets really good results. There are some exceptions. I've talked to some of these people that didn't get good results. And I would just be super cautious with long water fast because we're so toxic now that when the body starts cleaning itself out, then the poison that's being released is really strong and sometimes could hurt or kill the person, in my opinion. So there are people teaching things that kind of changed, they toned down the water fasting without losing the benefit, the most notable of which is juice fasting. And we've talked a lot about that on this show. The best kind of juicer to use for juice fasting that doesn't oxidize the nutrients and the life, tone down the life force in the juice is a slow masticating type juicer. I like the Omega one, and it's not very expensive. But you can get them all the way up to, juicers that cost thousands of dollars. I think the Omega is like $250 or something like that, and it's really good. It's got like a 10-year warranty. I've had very good experience with it, and it doesn't oxidize the juice as fast as a centrifugal juicer does. The centrifugal ones are still good, and you can get a lot of benefit out of those. It's just if you ever have time to get a masticating one, I think they're probably better. Usually, see, what happens is people are teaching the juice fasting and maybe some water fasting, and they almost always end up, when the fasting is over, putting the people on a raw vegan regime, sometimes fruitarian, where you just eat fruit, but a lot of them, more commonly, all kinds of raw vegan food. And if that works great for you in the long run for decades and you don't have any desire to go off it on the cooked food, great. But I've seen a lot of trouble with that, and I'm not the only one who's noticed that. Matt Monarch, who is a guest on our show, also has great videos on YouTube. His place is called Raw Food World. So I think his site is raw, R-I-W, foodworld.com. You can learn a lot from him. I like him a lot. But he said, most of the people can't stay successfully on 100% raw food, which he meant raw vegan, because they get psychologically unbalanced, they get really emaciated, they get weak, they get cold. This is from a guy that's done it for 24 years or something like that. This is not somebody out to criticize raw vegan lifestyle, because he did it for decades, and as far as I know, still is. But although I haven't been, in touch with him for the last couple of years. But he said, it's better to just eat organic, whole food, cooked food, and not go through what I just described that happens to the long-term raw vegans. He said, he's got a video, you can find it on YouTube for free, and it says why cooked food is better than raw food. And for me, I was raw vegan for quite a while and getting very cleaned out using enemas and colonics and organic, fresh, live raw food. I was having the same long-term experience that others did, getting super skinny. I'm not real heavy now, but I weighed 25 pounds less than now, and I'm pretty lean at the moment. But I weighed 25 pounds less than now, and I was very weak and unstable, freezing cold all the time. I couldn't do any work physically. It's not good, and I was doing everything right according to the raw vegan teaching. So, once you get committed to something like that, it's really hard to change it because you've memorized and understood all the reasons why it makes sense, and that anything else is really bad and you shouldn't change. So I knew I had to change. So it was really embarrassing. The people who were on fast food diet were in way better shape than I was, at least as functionally. They could work, and I couldn't. And they didn't freeze to death on a normal temperature day, and they didn't look like skeletons, most of them. So that was it. I had to change, and I didn't want to go back to cooked food no matter what, because I loved the much clearer condition of all my senses, and there were just a lot of benefits. I didn't feel that sleepiness that cooked food gives you after you eat. Was really bright and alert, but super weak. So I ended up adding raw milk, and that's like, straight from the devil, according to most of the raw vegans. And even the vegans that eat cooked food feel the same way in general. But, and they say, everybody's genetically intolerant, lots of people are, and you need lactase, and if you don't have it, it's going to make you feel like you have a cold all the time. It's just going to do these terrible things to you and give you osteoporosis and heart attacks and a few other things like that. And I remembered the old bumper sticker and the reality of science. And remember what that said. It said, question everything, which is real hard to do if you are attached to your beliefs. You don't want to question them at all. But if you're more attached to whatever's really true, and that's an interesting thing to ask yourself, then you have to question everything sincerely, and you end up getting to what's true. And if you have a basic sense that the reality is good, and there's this wonderful presence that people call God, or the source of life, or Great Spirit, or whatever, that you just feel is something really good, it's not something terrible, then you're not afraid, because whatever you find out that's true is just, why waste your time unwilling to find out? So that's what I did, and it was really difficult because I was a vegan. And at first, the raw milk gave me congestion and all kinds of, breathing problems and stuff, and I finally figured out that I had to repopulate my intestinal tract with bacteria and enzymes suitable for handling the milk. And however long that took, I had to do it. So I did. It took a few months. And after that, there was no more problem, and it worked fine. And I gained back, at that time, I guess 30 pounds of mostly muscle mass. Got all my body heat back, had no more craving for cooked food, a lot less craving for sugar, although I still liked it. But I ate it in the form of fruit, things like that. And it worked great. So I found out that belief system for me was untrue, and I started following it from there, and I found out it made sense to me because humans need saturated fat and cholesterol. And you know that because the government says they're terrible for you and it'll give you heart attacks. And worse, it'll, rot your brain and kill you or whatever. So that's a strong, helpful guidance from government that it's probably essential. And I found out that it was and is. And it's your nerve sheets need saturated fat and cholesterol. That's why your liver makes it. That's why the doctors give you statin drugs to paralyze that function of your liver so you can't have the cholesterol that you need, and you'll get dementia and your nerves will fall apart. All this peripheral neuropathy and all kinds of stuff. So there's another confirmation for you. I wanted, if I needed saturated fat, I wasn't going to get it by killing animals. I was at the point in my own consciousness where I could look in the eyes of an animal, and it was just so obvious. There's an emotionally aware being, and if I cause them pain, that's on me. I am not going to do it. But I wanted the fat in the form of live fruit, not cooked, not dead, not old. And for a real carnivore, not humans, but the ones that are supposed to be carnivores that are natural, the only way they get their live food is they kill the animal and eat it as it's dying. That's the way they like to do it. There's only a few, like vultures and hyenas, that can eat old, dead animals and be okay. But most of the real carnivores, they have to eat the meat absolutely raw, all the organs, all the blood. They eat everything, and they eat it right away. And we're not suited for that for many reasons, one of which is that we have a capacity for empathy which prevents you, if it's awake, from being a carnivore, because if you have empathy for the prey animal, which carnivores, real ones, do not, you can't cause it pain or kill it. Okay, so, but you need the fat. So I think raw milk is a spectacular superfood. And some of the raw vegan teachers behind the scenes and off the record have said, well, yeah, that's actually true. The old yogis and rishis and people used to use it, but I can't say that because all my followers in the raw vegan brand would all go berserk. And, they'd have to burn me at the stake. So I don't think I want to do that. And as a result, even the people that support what I'm talking about can't say so publicly. Also in the Essene Gospel of Peace, Book 1, it talks about using raw milk as a food, not putting the animals in feedlots or anything, but using raw milk. So there is an old way to raise animals for milk that is not being done anywhere on the planet that I can find. And I have called Hindu temples all over the planet, in India and other places, and they don't remember. And I'm sure that when Krishna was walking around and they had great reverence for cows and other animals, they were not abusing them. I'm sure of it. But the Hindus have lost that, the ones I've talked to anyway. And we'll just have to bring it back. So when and if we get the money for the school, and it's going to be a place of health and consciousness teaching, I can visualize it now. And I've been given all the details of what needs to be done there and how to build it. If we had the money, we could do it tomorrow. But it's pretty expensive, and I don't have the $25 million to do it myself. But there are people who may listen to this show at some point, or may be listening now, to whom that amount is not difficult. I've already been in touch with one family that has maybe 60 or 80 billion available, and it's not the money. It's A, whether they have any interest, and B, if they do have an interest, whether they could do it with no strings attached and not corrupt it in any way. Because I would rather it never happens on the physical level than to have any even remotely corrupting influence there at all. That number one thing is not the special architecture or the low-tech advanced, really interesting things that we'd see from the Atlantean period, or the farming, that there'd be a working farm there with rock dust and soil rejuvenated back to how it was immediately post-Ice Age. All kinds of interesting stuff. But the important thing over and above any of that is the atmosphere. And I'm talking about on the level of frequency and thought. So the money can't come from a source that would corrupt it or require something that would hype up something that's not real, or, the stuff that is done a lot in modern business now for the excuse of making money. But money itself is not bad at all. Money is potentially wonderful. And you know that because the government and religious authorities back through history have tried to keep it away from the people and in their own hands. And I am getting more and more interested in seeing large amounts of money, millions and billions of dollars, put in the hands of all these wonderful projects that are going on around the world, many of which are struggling for survival because they don't have any money. And I want to see that changed. So in addition to teaching health and consciousness at this school, which will be like another dimension, walking across the border of it is going to make you feel like, you just walked into some place of magic. And I had an experience like that when I was a university student in the 1960s, and I encountered Alan Chadwick, this great inspired teacher of horticulture and nature, who taught from his inspiration, not from what he memorized in a book. And he used to be a student of Rudolf Steiner, but he took it beyond that, and that was great. And he made this incredible magical garden place on a hillside of the university that was all rock and poison oak. And soon after the development of it started, if you stepped over the boundary, and I don't know how this worked physically, but you step over the boundary into that hillside, that he was digging up with a shovel and collecting the rocks and everything and removing the poison out, your whole body felt different. It was like, even those of us, including me, that were not very perceptive of things like that at the time, we knew something had happened. And I think it would be an honor to Alan Chadwick, such a great teacher, that we build a place like that on a much more complete level, which will be called Eldamar, by the way. You can read about it if you want to, just one possible scenario of it, on LostArtsResearchInstitute.org, and let me know what you think. I mean, how it will exactly manifest, if it does, I don't know. But it's not just for our project. I want to see the renaissance of large or huge amounts of money going to really wonderful projects. And in addition to that, I want to see people, individuals like you and me and everybody, getting to make the money they need to make for the things they want to do from work that they love. And that, you may have noticed, that's not the usual situation right now. Some people are, but most people that I've encountered are doing work that they hate to survive, the ones that are working, and that's not normal. I want to help. It's just like raising the dairy animals the way they're raised now, where they kill all the male babies and they kill the cows and the goats when they stop producing enough milk. That's not normal either. And there's another level of economics that is not what we're used to. It's very, very prosperous, but it's not the accounting system that we're on right now. You value the life of all beings, and you wish all of them to have the best lives they possibly can. So you don't kill them to get an extra dollar in profit. That's not what happens. And in fact, once you get to a certain point in your own awareness, which you will, then you can't knowingly, you don't even want to hurt anybody's feelings. I mean, you sometimes have to tell the truth if it will help them, but you don't want to cause pain to anybody if you can avoid it. So the working farm on the school grounds will have the soil completely changed. And remember, if you take care of the soil, you don't have to fertilize the plants. And if you don't need fertilizer, chemical fertilizer, which nobody ever did need it, then that was a complete misunderstanding. Then the plants get the good nutrition from the rock dust and the organic matter and the soil microorganisms, which are a vast universe in healthy soil. So the insects and disease do not bother those plants. You get a few being eaten all the time, but for the most part, you get abundant crops because the insects and the disease are there to remove the plants that are not healthy. And when your whole crop is fertilized artificially by chemical fertilizers with this water-soluble junk, forms of NPK and the other things that they use, then the insects and disease know they have to come and wipe out that crop, and then the poison company can say, aha, you see, if we didn't have pesticides, the world would starve. And then you get even some of the well-meaning, conservative type people, and conservative values are really good. It just means holding on to old values. But many of them don't understand that the so-called liberal people who were all supporting Rachel Carson in the 1960s, and she wrote a great book that you might like to read sometime. It's got an audiobook version for free on YouTube called Silent Spring. It's a classic. It's really good. And a lot of the people who are doing wonderful work on Agenda 21 and technocracy and all this stuff, they think that Rachel Carson was a crazy liberal. And these labels are what obscures your clear thinking. You know, calling somebody a liberal or conservative or a Democrat or Republican or a right or left, or instead of that, why not just look at the individual and pay attention to what they're saying and doing and learn from that instead of just short-circuiting the thinking with a label, which is a lazy way out, and it makes people fight over nothing. So Rachel Carson was really on target, thinking that all these new chemicals, not just pesticides, but industrial chemicals involved in manufacturing and stuff, those were a really, really bad idea. And she was 100% right. And one of the reasons that it's okay to see that is because there are and have always been alternative technologies, energy generation systems, and technologies way beyond what we have now that are designed to be compatible and friendly to humans and to other life forms on the planet. There's no reason at all that we couldn't be using all those things right now. This cell phone that I'm talking into right now, I appreciate that it's allowing me to get around the blockage, whatever, whoever is blocking me out of Blog Talk. But it's designed to hurt you. Microwaves aren't good for you. You know, it's like having an open air microwave oven with you being very, very slowly cooked by it. And if you have a cell phone, which I do, you know, and some people have to have them, my suggestion to you, and it's just a suggestion, is don't ever carry it on your body. And when you're talking on it, do not press it on your head. And if possible, put it down on a table or something and put it on speakerphone, because the new ones have good speakerphone, and talk into that from a foot or two away from it. I mean, it'll still work. And don't use it any more than you absolutely have to. We need to get the landlines back, or some way better technology that has been suppressed and hidden. And, you know, the real energy policy of America, not coming from Donald Trump or anybody right now, it's been there for decades. And the environmental policy is anything seriously environmentally beneficial is forbidden and banned. Any clean energy technology is banned. Any free energy technology is banned. This is the real policy, and it's run by levels of government above the visible level. Dr. Stephen Greer has talked about this in great detail, and I recommend that you hear his free YouTube free talks that are on YouTube that you can get anytime you want to. The technology that's friendly to humans is already designed. It's already ready to go. The top level of the rulers already have it. It's just a matter of releasing it. It's just like they have the top health information, but it's suppressed, and they can't use all of it because the real health information that would allow you to get back to your normal state of health, which is like an ageless, high energy, high immunity, very happy feeling, inspired, perceptive state all the time. Part of what you need for that is not just carrot juice or green juice. It's learning what mind is and reestablishing a relationship with mind and with body, both of which are independent, self-aware, conscious entities, and they don't respond well to programs of hatred and destruction, which is what our rulers are totally into. So they know they're handicapped, and until they're willing to give up their malice, they can't possibly match what you could do. You're not supposed to know this, obviously. You're supposed to feel like you're very limited, weak, dependent. You need experts to tell you everything. This is the real situation. And if you become aware of that and you become aware of what the laws of nature are and you start rejuvenating your physical body, which you can totally do, as long as the doctors haven't done too much damage to it, or the environmental chemicals and stuff. This is why Rachel Carson was not only right, she was brilliant and very brave and honest at her time. Because none of these environmental poisons should ever have been manufactured. Completely destructive and worse than worthless, in my opinion. And I've looked at them for a long time. And I don't want us to have a lower lifestyle. It's not one or the other. I don't want us to get rid of our SUVs or air conditioners or anything like that. There is no reason for that. If the real technology is released to the public, you get to use energy as you need to. And I don't agree to use it to tear up the environment. There's no need to do that. But you can have all these appliances and vehicles and flying machines and everything They use lots and lots of energy with no pollution whatsoever, and they don't do anything bad to the climate. So the solution is not tightening your belt. It's getting these energy sources released, and it's going to have to happen pretty soon if it's going to happen, because things are reaching a crescendo in many ways. So, this misinformation on health that you're given about the germ theory, even Pasteur realized that was nonsense before he died. But of course, nobody listened at that point, because his earlier misinformation, honestly thinking that the germs were causing all the diseases, that was providing tremendous energy for the huge drug and poison and chemical industries. And so they didn't want to change it. But Pasteur realized that that was completely not true. Plugging this phone in so I won't lose the charge and die in the middle of a sentence here. Hold on. Just take a second. What percentage is it on? Still about halfway, but I want to look at it anyway. Okay, so it's charging. So anyway, Pasteur said, sorry about the germ theory thing, to paraphrase Ghostbusters and Bill Murray's character, Dr. Bankman, but he was just wrong. And he said the terrain is everything. And what is a terrain? The terrain is the condition of your tissues. So if you fill up your body with a lot of undigestible garbage that can't be processed, from processed food, a lot of meat residue, even cooked food to some extent, that's like filling up a petri dish that attracts the microorganisms whose job it is to break it down. They're not evil. They're not trying to hurt you. They're there to make sure we don't have piles of undigested garbage all over the world to make it uninhabitable. And their job is to do that in your body as well. And you're walking through clouds of them all the time. And they do not hurt you unless you build up all this garbage within your body, and then they sense it at some point, and they move in the process of decomposition that they do for you, dangerous in itself in many cases, or it could kill you. And so the germ theory misunderstanding gets perpetuated, but it was never true the way that it was first understood. So if the terrain and the condition of your tissues is everything, according to Pasteur, how do you make good terrain? Well, the basics that you guys have gotten familiar with, if you're regular listeners, it's not complicated really. Organic, fresh, live, raw food, vegan food and milk, and fasting and juice fasting for detox. Moving, if you can't do that all at once, you move toward it, You don't start judging or condemning somebody because they're eating meat or because they're eating processed food or because they want to be on a donut and, fresh animal diet or whatever. You don't ever condemn anybody for anything. The whole judgment thing is berserk. It's self-destructive and spiritually suicidal. It doesn't mean that you don't notice when somebody's doing something destructive. You have to notice things in order to make your best decisions for yourself and, do things in the world the best way you can. But condemning is different than recognizing what's going on. You're not going to be able to realize the higher levels of healing if you're condemning anybody, and it doesn't matter if you're justified or not. So you use fasting and you clean up your body, you get in harmony with the sun energy, you get plenty of sleep, because that's when you're healing. It's just like when you go to the gym and work out. You are not getting stronger when you work out. It's the opposite. When you work out, you tear up your muscle. And during the day when you work, you do the same thing to some extent. It's at night when you're sleeping, completely relaxed, not next to a Wi-Fi router, in the best environment that you can, in darkness. That's when you build. So sleep is critical. Grounding is critical. We're wearing shoes all day that prevent that, but it's really therapeutic to take some time every day to walk barefoot on a clean, safe surface, grass or, wet ground or a stream or the ocean, whatever you can get to. And to get exercises, you need 3 different kinds, resistance and stretching and aerobic. And you need to repair what has happened to the body and mind, but not just physically. Also the relationship and the communication that you have with both of them is critical. So, again, I'm not giving medical advice at all. Very important. I mean, we may be under attack now, but we'd really be under attack if we did medical advice. And I don't believe in medical advice anyway. So you need to go to somebody who's really good at it, like your doctor, and, you know, ask them all the drugs you need and what organs that you need to have removed and when you should start chemotherapy and all these things. So please go do that immediately. I'm not I'm not recommending against any of those things. I'm saying go get it, all the things that you need to get. This is not about medical stuff. This is about laws of nature that were forgotten a long time ago, and they have never gone away. They still work. You still need to understand the cycles of detox and look at Lauren Loughlин's videos, like I told you. But you only do that with somebody experienced, if it's needed. I mean, if you get really experienced yourself, then you know what to do. But if you do what I said about your relationship with mind and body, then you can make any changes in your lifestyle with no need for willpower whatsoever, which I think is pretty valuable, because that's what stops a lot of people. So, but why do you want to deal with any of this at all? Why do you spend the time to listen to some guy on the radio or do any of this work in your own life? I guess to respond to that, I would ask you if you know a psychological term. It's called normalcy bias, Normalcy, normalcy bias. And psychologically, what that means is whatever you're used to, your mind starts to get you thinking that it's normal, because if you're constantly thinking that it's not, it's distressing. So, in other words, you can get used to almost anything, no matter how terrible it is. Stockholm Syndrome is a variation of normalcy bias, because you start thinking that being somebody's slave is normal. We have that to some degree as well. But look around, if you can, with clear vision as possible, and you'll see that kids, when they're born, I mean, not so much lately, even kids are having diseases really young now. Things are getting really serious. But in general, a few decades ago anyway, kids were starting out relatively clean, pure, high energy, happy, bright, running around playing, not all of them on inhalers and with ADD and all this nonsense that they're all being afflicted by now. But even those relatively healthy kids, gradually, they would get less and less healthy, and the doctors and health teachers would be saying, oh yeah, when you're 30 or 40 years old now, so you can't do the sports that you used to do, you can't be as active, you're going to have back trouble, you're going to have allergies. And at each age, we'll recalibrate to normal, saying, oh, well, I can't do this, I can't do that. And then eventually, when you can't think clearly anymore and you don't know who you are, and, it's just painful to even be in your body at all, those very bad late stages are called normal, the result of age, which is complete nonsense. And then you get drugged to death in hospice, and it's called palliative care, make you feel better, and cutting-edge science to help you not feel pain. And then you're basically being euthanized gradually. That's where everybody's heading in the current system. And the reality is, you see all this aging and degeneration going on, the depression. Dr. Gabriel Cousens talked about the extent of it. It's amazing. Pain and anger and weakness and fear and drug addiction, medical drugs mostly, but other drugs too. The power structure is very happy if you get addicted to marijuana or heroin or cocaine or Advil or whatever, just so that you never get clear on what you would feel like with nothing but clean food. And everybody's walking around in conflict with the earth and the sun, not getting grounded, worried about sunlight killing them, out of touch with the weather, hormones out of balance, all the men getting low testosterone and the women getting their hormones out of balance too. men going crazy and women going crazy almost as much as men, and just in slightly different style, but both of them. And then all this conflict of the sexes going on, gender confusion, and lack of good mates for anybody to find, and just total confusion about everything. And nature is suffering in addition to humanity, and the animal species are disappearing. And very good people are taught that they're weak, and they have to be controlled by those that are serving darkness. This stuff is, well, first I have to ask you if you see anything wrong with that picture. And you'd probably say yes, but my point is that we've started walking around thinking that all this is normal. None of it's normal. And from what I've been able to see from the research that I've done and the experience I've had, you are designed, even in your physical body, at this low, slow level of vibration and frequency, to stay bright and alert like you were as a younger person. Lots of energy, able to do whatever you want. And your sense is very clear. Your mental perception is very clear. That's normal. Okay, so none of it's normal that we're seeing around us. But all of it is cause and effect. And if you don't like the effect, instead of fighting with the effect, it makes more sense in general to change the cause. So what's the cause? And yeah, I know it's a lot of, millions of different effects that we're talking about being bad, but maybe there's an underlying cause of most of it. And you remember that, those of you that have been here, regular listeners, you remember our stories about Dr. Len. What did he find out the cause was? This is not understood by what's called modern science, but he found out that the cause was him, and for each one of us, the only cause of all these bad things is us. That's not being figurative. He said literally, you personally are the cause. And this is something that most people would never grasp formally. But if you're brave, and you can see at a deeper level that the cause of everything in your projected hologram that you call reality, including the actions of other people, even though this goes against normal logic, does that make you bad or worthy of punishment or a slave? A terrible person? No. The weird thing is it's the opposite. It empowers you to an unlimited extent, to the degree that you can grasp and realize that. So you can change the causes, reharmonize your lifestyle with nature as a start, and your body will change. Even just exercise changes your body. I'm doing some interesting experiments with that now. But with a complete lifestyle program that you start putting yourself through at your own pace, not what you can't handle, but the changes that you can do. And you learn what it means to love other people, not make-believe, but a level of love that is a gift. It doesn't mean you think they're great. It means you decide what you want to give them. So you love all other beings, and then you get into, besides the humans, you start realizing, oh, wow, I never noticed that trees and animals and birds and all these other life forms, they're not only alive, like we're taught, they're just these lowly, instinct-driven beings, right, for us to take advantage of. No, they're actually emotionally aware and very perceptive beings. An insect is doing its job better than most of us, and understanding its role, and using direct perception of what plants it should go to and all this stuff. They are not these, stupid, inanimate objects just animated by something not alive called instinct. It's way, way beyond that. So if you start to be brave enough to open up to perceive life in these other beings and see it's not what you thought it was, it's way beyond, then the result of that, the effect of that, is that your perception will open. And you're realizing, whoa, it's all in my hands. And you'll change back closer and closer to who you always were. And you might as well get to enjoy it. So I'm just suggesting we all do that to the degree that we can and keep learning. And if we do, then this will create like an alliance of awakening beings, not who memorized a belief system. I'm talking about really doing it. And not the kind that thinks our belief is right and everybody else is wrong. It's not even remotely like that. It's people who are really getting back, throwing off their conditioning and being brave enough to get back to who they are. And this kind of a force, a healing force, working together could change the Earth's energy atmosphere back to being conducive to planetary healing and helping you personally in the process. That's really the primary work of this Lost Arts project that we're doing. It's not just to give you an interesting show and then you go back and say, oh, that was a really interesting show. I'll tell some other people and I'll go back to everything I was doing before. It's not for that. I mean, it's okay. Nobody's obligated to do anything. But for those people that are looking for a massive change in their life while they're still here in this brief period in the physical body, I want to make some little contribution to that. So maybe this project will grow if it's meant to. Maybe it'll grow to the point of having the physical school and other projects if the money sources show up. And, you know, if I really believe any of what I've told you, then I know that if I want to see that happen, there are blocks in myself that I have to find and remove if I want to see that outer circumstance develop. And I would like to see it grow and become strong for everybody that would benefit. So money and other resources should be no exception to what we've been talking about. If we want to find them, if we want to find the resources, we've got to look in ourselves, find the blocks that correspond to not having a certain resource, whatever it is that you want, and get rid of that, which takes courage. And I want to see everybody be able to work at what they love instead of jobs they hate and make all the money and resources that they need. So, you know, this whole show puts a big responsibility on me, because anybody who talks about this stuff and suggests it to other people to think about, they have to do it. Otherwise, they're just another hypocrite. So this gives me massive amount of homework, like as John has said on the show. I have a lot of homework because of what I talk about. I realize I have to do it. And I'm busy all week trying to incorporate that in everything. So the principle always comes back: find and remove the inner block and watch the outside changes for feedback. And if it's not changing the way you want, don't criticize what's happening on the outside. Go back inside, do a better job of finding the next level, change that, and then look on what happens on the outside. It always comes back to that in some way. And the feedback is all around us. So, you know, it's worth looking at. I also wanted to mention, before I take a couple of calls, which I will, and, you know, I'm always really bad about remembering the number. Anybody who wants to call in, you still have a little bit of time to do that. 657-383-1002. 657-383-1002. I would enjoy hearing from you. You don't have to agree with anything I said at all. It'd just be nice to hear what you think, and comments, questions, experiences, things like that. 657-383-1002. I know we don't have as much time as usual because I got blocked out of the show today for, half an hour or more. So sorry about that. I hope that's not going to be an ongoing pattern. I wanted to mention that, you know, we've had some shows with Dr. Warner on the Muslim situation, and I really appreciate my Muslim friends very much. I find them inspirational. But they're caught, most of them are caught in a terrible situation where they're told that God expects them to support killing everybody who's not a Muslim. And I don't think that's a very good plan. And I know that most of the somewhat conscious Muslims don't agree with that either. And I'm not telling them to officially leave their religion, or I wouldn't tell that to anybody. But I am looking for a way where they could breakout of the requirement to support terrorism, which is exactly what Muhammad said to do. He said, slavery is fine, sex slavery is fine, women are worth half as much as men or less. You can mutilate your daughters, you can kill them as an honor killing if they don't, if they show anything bad about the religion, or it's got a lot of really destructive orders that you have to follow. And so I wrote something that we're working on right now and probably be out soon. It's called a Declaration of Independence for Muslims and their friends, and I consider them my friend. I consider myself their friend. And I'm going to sign it right away, even though it says that anybody who tries to leave all these commandments has to be killed, or anybody who encourages Muslims to do that. We're going to have a big mess. We already have a big mess. And billions of Muslims carrying out Muhammad's dictates verbatim, which say that everybody else has to die, would not really make the best environment for them or us. So this project is going to be showing itself shortly, and you can let me know what you guys think of it. Remember Lauren Lockman's work if you want to see what a water fasting place looks like. The problems that come with it, which there are problems with it, even though he doesn't talk about them. There are, because I've met the people who it didn't work for. And the upgrades, and you also could look at Dr. Morse's work, Dr. Robert Morse, MD, really great stuff on cleansing, but tells people to go on raw vegan or all fruit when you're done, and then says, well, nobody can stay on that because the energy is too high. I don't think so. I think nobody can stay on it because it turns them into a skeleton and it doesn't have the fat that they need. And I know that, Dr. Morse would probably consider me completely crazy for that. And I think he's a great teacher and has a lot of wonderful things to say, which I would endorse. But it might be interesting to use to see that for the cleansing phase, the detox phase, when he puts people on 100% fresh fruit, and they get over like severed spinal cords, MS, Lou Gehrig's disease. I mean, he's got some of the most spectacular healing accounts of anybody in the world. But what I think some people miss is that the maintenance and building phase, which is after detox, is not the same as detox. And the reason you see that is look at the people who hold on to the detox protocol as their maintenance protocol. They either can't do it or they get some kind of bad result, with very, very rare exceptions. And most of the people teaching the raw food lifestyle don't do it. They don't stay raw vegan. They just say, well, it would be the best, and I try it once in a while, but I can't do it all the time. And then they give some excuse. And I don't think that makes any sense. If it's really a good lifestyle, you should be able to do it all the time. So with the raw milk and the relationship with mind and body healed, I found that you can do it with no willpower. And I'd like other people to know about that. Several people have asked me this week by email and other people that I've talked to about all the products that they could make from raw milk, kefir, cheese, whey, curds, yogurt, and asked me if that's good or just drinking the milk. And my response to that, just from my own feeling, and I encourage you to just follow what you feel, but nature designed the milk to build bodies in a beautiful way, and everything is there in perfect balance. As soon as you split that, you may not get the same result. And one example is if you make yogurt, which is great, I think yogurt tastes really good, hopefully you make it with no heat, because heat leaves a lot of dead material in there with the yogurt. If you make yogurt, you have a whole bunch of whey left over. You could drink the whey, which people do, and they even sell dried forms of the whey as a supplement. But if you did that, you eat the yogurt and the whey, then you're getting the whole thing. And I just think that seems like it would be better than splitting the milk into curds and whey or cheese and whey and then throwing away half of it. I'm just suspicious of that over the long run, because of the delicate balance that I see in how everything else gets put together. But another question several people asked was the type of juicer. They asked me about kombucha also, several people. And kombucha is made by fermenting a very high sugar content mixture, and it doesn't sound like a very good thing to do to me. It might taste kind of neat, like a slightly alcoholic drink, but I've never found any reason to drink alcohol that I can think of. I mean, why would you want to become less conscious once you understand the scenario that we're actually in? So I don't really think kombucha sounds like a very good thing to drink. And other people have said, well, how do you start on this? I'm not ready to just do all raw food. That's not practical in my lifestyle. I'm saying, well, if you don't have a serious health condition, and again, if you do, please see your doctor, get all the drugs, have your organs cut out as needed, and all that stuff. I'm not trying to give medical advice or compete with that. But from this ancient, interesting historical point of view, if you don't have a serious health condition, you can start gradually getting rid of processed food, making sure that you never eat GMOs under any circumstances. Try to never eat anything that's not organic as a minimum standard, because otherwise you're drinking some pesticides. And why would you ever want to do that? I mean, some of them will hurt you at parts per billion. And the homeopaths have demonstrated that once you have the presence of some product or material, even if you dilute it down to almost nothing, it's really still there in energy form. So I don't think you'd want to have glyphosate and all the other horrible pesticides, any form. So you just, in my case, I've been in times, a lot of times, when I've had almost no money. I wouldn't buy non-organic food, even if they call it conventional. It's not true. It's poison food. I'd rather get one cucumber and eat that than get a big meal and conventional food. I just would not do it. And once you understand about that, then, you just don't eat poison anymore. And why make it hard for yourself and your future like that? But you have to tailor what you do to the speed of what you're ready for. And I would just start getting rid of processed food, getting rid of meat as soon as you can in all forms, fish, birds, and mammals, as humans aren't designed to eat those and they cause trouble. And they also have an effect on consciousness, which is not positive. And get rid of processed food, get rid of drugs and alcohol, and then start adding a little bit more raw food as you can, and work with the mind protocols, because that's what allows you to do it easily. Answers to questions we've had. And again, we will take a little bit of time to do a few calls right now. Anybody that still wants to get in has a chance. 657-383-1002. If you're on hold listening and you want to ask a question, just press whatever key it said to press. I think it was 1, and it'll come up on the board that you have a question for us. Otherwise, it's fine to just listen on the phone too. In the meantime, John has been holding for like 2 hours, so in Texas. I'm really sorry about that, John. And sorry I was gone for a lot of that time in the beginning. And how are you doing and what's going on this week? If I can get you to your line open there. I think you're there.
Yes.
So,
yep, I'm here. Thank you. Thank you, Doug, for keeping the show on. I basically am glad that you persisted despite some of the problems that have been coming up.
Yeah, I'm glad to.
Awesome. I had a question. I was talking with some the people that I mentioned last week who are parents who have been, listening to the podcast, the archives, and we kind of had some questions. One of the things that they were talking about was how to develop a sense of good behavior and discipline in their children without basically, falling back on the religious or cultural systems of judgment that, we've been talking about how they basically can be very restrictive and they can kind of create more conflict than they resolve. So basically not using those, but like they were wondering basically what kind then of philosophy or approach in basically dealing with children and trying to teach them the quote-unquote right from wrong without basically, using a judgment system to say this is right and this is wrong.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great question, and everybody has to deal with it. And I'm still learning, obviously, but it seems to me one of the things that's important there is that there are two ways that you get connected to a teacher and try to, get something useful from them. One is fear and one is love. If you're afraid that disobeying is going to get you damaged or killed or sent to hell or whatever, what happens is you obey out of fear for a while and then you relapse and everything falls apart. And then you get blamed for it. It's just a mess. But if you have a relationship of love, then your allegiance is much stronger and much more stable. And you can demonstrate the same thing with a pet, a dog or a cat, that you just pour love onto. If you have to do something that's difficult for them at some point, they'll let you do it, and they'll try to obey. But if you just threaten them with hitting them all the time, all they're going to be thinking about is running away. So I would say, as a general rule, with kids or anybody that you're trying to get their interest and allegiance that way, first of all, you have to be an example. You can't tell them to do things that you're not obviously doing the counterpart in your own life. So you have to just look for ways of being a better and better example as time goes on. And then the other thing that goes with that is you really pay attention to who the kid is as a person. You don't have a stereotype, this is my kid, they have to do this. You realize they're a unique individual with a completely developed personality that they've had since before birth, and that's what made actually the embryo develop the way it did and the genes line up the way it did, is because that kid brought in a history and a past and a personality that was fully developed, and then had to gradually figure out how to fit it into the physical world. And you take a deep interest in that kid, and you have appreciation and respect for them, and then you just shower them with love in as many ways as you possibly can. Not make-believe, but the kind of love that you just want them to have everything good. I don't just mean physical things. I mean listening when they're talking, and pay attention to what they like and try to find versions of what they like that would not hurt them, that you can get them interested in. And remember that if you understand the mind principles that we're talking about, that kid, until they understand better, is also totally wrapped up with mind themselves. So the skill that you develop in making the relationship with your own mind is the same skill that you use to get a relationship turned around with your kid's mind. And when you make that relationship strong, the kid is already there because they're totally wrapped up in mind. And from there, you can go on to the next stages beyond it. But I think you have to do it step by step like that. And then if you do it that way, they're just going to be so devoted to you that, it's not like the result you get through force.
No, that makes sense. And especially when you break it down.
I mean, if you have to, John, if you have to pull your kid out of the way of an oncoming train, you use force. I'm not saying you sit down and try to love them, and so you grab their arm and pull them out of the way of the train. But most of the time, it's not a situation like that. When it is, you have to recognize it. If they're in a school that wants to give them vaccinations, and you understand what's wrong with that, and they love the school, you get them out of that school. Okay, but most situations aren't like that. They're where you do have a little bit of leeway, and you can develop the positive relationship that becomes their motivation for wanting to do whatever you suggest. It works really well. It's more work because you have to look for hypocrisies in yourself and correct them.
And that's kind of what you've talked about in the past, where whether regardless of it's religion or your particular culture that you were raised in, you've got to basically begin to look at that and see, I mean, again, not in a critical way, but analyze what parts of your behavior that you basically are using and are not working for you, and then just release them rather than...
I mean, you know, if I were a follower of Moses back in that time, and he told me, and I had the awareness I do now, and he told me to start killing animals in order to, you know, make God happy, I would leave.
Yeah.
Even if I was an outcast, I would leave, because I know there's something called direct perception that you develop slowly, and it tells you that God is the most beautiful thing you can imagine, and never orders you to damage or kill other beings. It doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, you don't get in a big fight with the person who tells you to do that, but you are responsible for the level of consciousness that you have. So you have to listen, you know, when your inner guidance tells you something is true. Even if everybody else tells you you're crazy, you have to honor it.
Mm. And how do we know when that inner voice that's trying to get us to do something is coming from the right place, which is, like you've said, love, versus a place of fear? Is there a way to know?
Yeah,
for sure?
well, you know, there's something that people have. It's a faculty that we all have that is denigrated, and we're told that it's ridiculous, that it's subjective, that it's unscientific, and it's just the way that it misleads you. And that faculty is called feeling. And what I'm suggesting is that's a hidden jewel, that if you allow yourself to become more and more aware of how you feel when you project yourself into different possibilities or just about what's happening, and you start understanding what it means by experience, which takes time. When something comes up from anybody that tries to get you to do something out of fear, and you listen to how that feels, you're going to absolutely know. You don't need to intellectually analyze it. You can feel it directly, and that can give you wonderful guidance in a lot of situations. You know, if a kid is in a gang, you know, in junior high school, and the gang leader is really tough and impressive, and everybody looks up to him and wants to become like him, and he says, yeah, now we're going to go ahead and beat up some of these disabled kids over here because it's going to make us even tougher. If that kid has learned to be aware of their feeling, no matter what their intellect says, the feeling says, never do that. As long as the kid is true to that feeling, he won't participate in going and beating up those other kids. And adults is the same way. You know, if everybody in your peer group says to do something that you know is not ethical, it's not. See, you can't memorize rules for everything that's ethical and not ethical. There's too many variables. So you need some faculty that's going to hook into whatever's really happening for you and tell you clearly right away what it actually means and what to do. And fortunately, you have that natural ability. So it's part of what starts coming up consciously when you start removing blocks. And the very first beginning of that is when you stop eating so much garbage and poison in your body. And it moves on from there. And when you start talking to your mind, you can interest your mind in being tuned into that guidance too. It's just like a kid you're taking care of, and you say, you know, there's something that's a little more grown up that you haven't really done yet. It's really neat, and if you think you might be able to start learning about it, I'm going to let you work on it with me. And you don't have to produce it because it's already there. You just have to alert me to what it's saying, and I will listen to it, and you'll get to enjoy the experience with me. So getting back in touch with that guidance is a really high priority, because what seems to be good logic can mislead you very easily.
So it may take some time, though, for that to come out, you're saying? Because you were saying it may take a little while. It can take some time.
It takes time, but it starts showing up right away. Mm-hmm. It's just that it gets better and better with time. It's like in the 50s and 60s when these lynch mobs were going after black people in the South. Any member of that lynch mob that tuned into what feeling was trying to tell them would never have gone along with that. Mm. And the same thing is happening now. The people that say, oh, the white males are all evil and they need to be killed and all that. Anybody who has the beginning of any sensitivity to their own guidance would never believe any of that nonsense. Everybody's pure spirit and needs to be respected. So your own connection to the source knows that, and it doesn't need a reason. It knows it. And it doesn't know it because it memorized it. It notices it. It knows it because it can see it. And you can develop that pretty quickly if you're willing to. Mm-hmm. It starts with being aware of what you feel more and more of the time. And then once you get that, you say, well, what do I feel underneath that? It's more subtle. And tuning into that. And it's the same with both the thoughts and the emotions. The first step into guidance is even becoming aware of those programs that are running through all the time. Make them conscious. That leads to the next steps quickly.
And on the same note, you were talking about the kids being bullying the other children with special needs and the prevalence of bullying in the media. Why does it seem that children who are the victims of bullying these days seem to resort to suicide so quickly? I mean, it's very tragic, and it just seems to be happening more and more. I'm not sure if you have a view on that or can help.
Well, there's two reasons that you can see right away. One of them is that a lot of them now are on drugs. And on the medical insert on that drug, the piece of paper, it says, oh, this is this is for ADHD or whatever other problem you have. And one of the side effects is suicide, but don't worry about that. If you do commit suicide, let your doctor know right away, but, there's nothing wrong with the drug. That's one reason. The other reason is that the programming that kids get in conventional schools, also known as government indoctrination centers, that detaches them intentionally from any awareness of themselves. And when they have no sense of self, no respect and love for themselves, they don't see that they have any value. And if the other kids all want to beat them up, they think that must be because they're not worth anything. I mean, I had an experience similar to that when I was in elementary school a long time ago. And if you're not in touch with yourself, which education disconnects you from that, then you're, very easily falling for the suggestion that you have no value, which leads to suicide. So I would say it's those psychological and physical elements like that. At this point, I would be very careful about where your kids are sent off to.
Right. So parents are concerned about making sure their children don't, consider that as an option to get away from the persecution of bullying or pain. They just need to help.
Yeah, I mean, even a kid that's subjected to bullying, if they have a sense of self-worth, they're not going to do anything bad from that.
Right. So that's what I was going to say. So parents can do that as a safeguard right from, day one, whether or not they go to public school.
Yeah, no, I mean, you don't want to put your kids where that's likely to happen. But your main priority is to give the kid, it's funny because the Common Core and all the scams of fake education are emphasizing self-esteem and all that. But the way they do self-esteem is to make you a mindless robot. And that gives you self-esteem. The funny thing is, self-esteem really is super critical, and it is even more important than math and English and geography and everything. Not that you shouldn't learn those subjects, but the sense of self is the most important no matter how old somebody is. So if that's given to the kid by the parent respecting and taking an interest in them, not just sending them off to play video games that you don't know what's in the images, or some TV program that's going to teach them to be a mindless zombie, or that they're really stupid, which a lot of sitcoms teach you. In the environment that we're in right now, in what is called modern society, it takes a lot of work, because if you take the lazy way out and don't watch what your kids are in the middle of, that's what they get the education from. And a combination of that and the drugs is what's causing all the suicide, I think.
So it can
and
be
one of the drugs is microwave radiation. So all of the microwave transmitters right in the elementary and other schools are very malicious. They're not a good idea.
Yeah, that's the other part. You beat me to the punch, because I was wondering, and so you answered that, because you've talked about in the past where these companies hide the cell towers now in public buildings that want to generate more revenue, how much that has a part to play.
And it doesn't take much. I mean, I live near a church, and the church put a cell tower right in the middle of Sunday school and everything else, and they only get like a couple $1,000s a month. So for that much money, they're willing to damage all of their members and visitors and staff. It's just amazing. But
I remember your interview with Barry Keller. Because I thought about that when I remember you'd mentioned that, and then your interview with Barry Trower, and he talked about some of the side effects of close proximity to some radiation waves, that how it affected people.
He said it's no problem to control thoughts with microwaves as the carrier. It's easy. Right. So, I mean, if people are getting violent and suicidal and homicidal and all that stuff, that's the intent. That's part of the plan of the global rulers right now. They want everybody wanting to kill each other, because it gives them cover to try to finish what they're doing.
That's something else parents have to consider taking to the schools, is basically any action to remove these towers, should they be anywhere on the grounds of the school.
Yeah, I know people who are doing that and trying to do lawsuits and everything, and the schools are fighting them, and the other parents are fighting them, and it's like going after people who are anti-vaccine. They're trying to murder all the children, and anybody who's in favor of getting the cell towers out and the wireless stuff out wants the students to fall behind Russia. I mean, all this incredible stuff. And it's funny they pick on Russia, because Russia is the most anti-Wi-Fi country that I know of, and they've also banned GMOs.
Right.
But, they're still supposed to be the big enemy.
More misinformation.
Yeah, I mean, you can hardwire computers. You don't need Wi-Fi. You can have a source that is not a local cell tower or transmitting point, and just put in, if you want the computers, just put in Ethernet cables or fiber optics.
Right.
You don't save money by killing all the kids. It's not a very good idea.
No. Well, I appreciate your information, because I said my friends who have children were kind of wondering about that, because it does get to be kind of challenging looking for some of these answers.
It really does, and I'm sorry it's so much work to have kids in this time, but it just is. Most people are they're so stressed trying to have their own life. They feel like they have to just send the kids off to play video games, or go to whatever school they can go to. And I totally understand that. It's just that it's worth knowing that you have to really keep an eye on all these things. What's in the cartoons. I mean, did a great project where he took one of the really neat kids' cartoons with this little animal of some kind that was the hero, and they stopped the frames and they looked in the iris of the animal, and it had all these demonic signs in it. In the iris of the animal, like some little puppy or something. So it's worth, if you can put in the energy to be alert as a parent, the only way to really succeed at doing it is to take such good care of yourself that your own energy stays really high and you feel good, normally, and your health is good. And I mean, without that, it's harder to do what you need to do for the kids, I think.
Right. And that's what you always emphasize.
Right back, take care of yourself if you want to help other people.
Right. You've always emphasized the balance, starting with the diet and making sure that basic physical health can then support you.
Yeah, it's like, things, the mind has programs. It's recalibrated to normal. Like if it wants to get drunk all the time, as an obvious example, it has told itself in the program that this is how we have fun, right? And so it gets in a really bad mood if it can't do that. Even if it's throwing up the next day, who cares? That is defined as fun. So you can either fight it, which usually doesn't work, or you can start repairing the relationship with mind, which is just like what you have to do with a kid, and get it on your side and then say, that's really great how you have me completely controlled with, wanting to get drunk every day, but I have something that might be even more fun. Why don't we try putting attention over on this? And that way you don't have to stop getting drunk. It'll just be forgotten. And I think that principle can work all over the place.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate it, and appreciate you and Doug again sticking it out. I know basically you got some people probably waiting on the hold, so thanks again for all the answers.
I hope we're allowed to keep having this show. I'm beginning to wonder why for the last 4 weeks I haven't been able to get on. But I guess we'll find out.
I don't think it's a coincidence. I'm pretty sure, like you said, it's probably ruffled a few feathers. So
the computer systems are working absolutely fine, except when I personally try to log on to the radio network. Anyway,
not too
we just need a few $1 million for our own servers like Alex Jones, and then it'll be okay, I guess.
Well, I put that in my thoughts when I do my homework, so I'll keep trying.
Yeah, good. Me too.
Thanks. All right. Well, you guys have a good weekend.
Good night.
Thanks.
All right.
You too. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Bye.
Talk to you later. Okay, we're going to take a couple more calls, and if you want to try to get in at 657-383-1002, I'm sorry we're later than usual. I want to see what's happening with Dee in California. Hi, Dee. Sorry for the long hold, and thanks for being here.
Hi, Richard. Thanks for answering. I was tuned into Blog Talk when you were not able to come on.
Yeah,
and then like 20 minutes or so went by, and I finally decided to log back out and log back in to Blog Talk. And I didn't even know that you came back on, or the music that Doug had was playing, unless I went out and back in. So there could have been.
Okay.
So there could be people just sitting there.
I was never able to get in through the normal system. I had to call in on the cell phone.
Well, I'm wondering, because in past shows, I've noticed that I can't listen to it if it hasn't come on yet and I go on there early, and then
that's true. You have to wait.
It won't come on for me if I log in too early. I have to wait till you're already on before I log into Blog Talk. Otherwise, I won't hear you at all.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, well, what the rule is for us is we get to log in anytime 15 minutes early or later. And at that point, it gets us set up. But it has just been refusing me completely.
Interesting.
So,
maybe people might want to realize also that once you do get back on, they have to log back out and back in order to hear you.
Oh, I didn't know about that. So that is interesting.
Yeah, that's what happened with me. So that's why, people could be sitting there even though you did finally get on and still not hear you if they don't log back out and back in.
Exactly, yeah. I should have asked John because he was on before I was able to get in. And I don't know if he logged out or not. But
I'm wondering if somebody's logged in before you log in, if that's blocking you from logging in.
I never did before.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's supposed to, I've come in the middle of the show and it's let me right in, and everything else is working fine now, except for it won't let me log in at all.
Oh, wow.
So where that's coming from, I don't know.
Okay. Well, I had a few questions. One of them is when you were talking about, you know, how the people that don't know any better, that are wanting to destroy everybody by sacrificing some ritual. I'm trying to relate their actions to nature, and I'm trying to figure out why nature is actually almost based on the big fish eating the little fish. Do you have any insight to that?
Well, the whole realm of the carnivore world is, you know, there are different lessons to learn there, and those are all living beings that are all, you know, made out of spirit just like we are, but they're not on the human level. So, you know, for whatever reason, part of what they signed up for is this fish eat fish world, you know. But humans have a different potential of perception where they don't, not only do they not have to do that, they aren't designed for it. And when humans do things destructive, not just eat each other, but, you know, things to sabotage each other or cause damage to other people, it has an immediate effect, negative effect on the person doing it. And if they have any consciousness at all developed, they can't do that. But the ones who are completely wrapped up in the negative programming, they get to stay there as long as they want to. It's totally free will. But at some point, they get tired of it and they start being unable to ignore the negative consequences. And that starts a searching cycle that changes things. And, you know, it's just totally individual. But, you know, I don't have any enjoyment seeing the carnivores eat each other in the animal world. But, you know, that seems to be what they're having to go through at the moment for whatever reason. I don't think it's going to be permanent.
Okay, so it might be just a phase of learning, maybe, for nature itself.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Yeah, this is a big, big system. I mean, it's running on so many different levels at once, so incredibly complex. And as far as I can see, every one of those life forms is alive and conscious in a different way. And when they're done learning what they're learning, they'll take a form appropriate to what they're ready to learn next.
Oh, that leads me into my next question. On taking a form, I'm curious, because in death, like you were saying, when you die, you're not really going to vanish. You're just going to change a form. So
that's right.
When that happens, does any of your research show, or at least speculate on whether picking up a new form would leave off where one was, or does one have to go start at square A and go through all the hang-ups again? Do you know?
I guess my memory is very partial. It only goes through some of what I've experienced in this level, which you could call three-dimensional, and the one right above it, which is the whole multitude of astral worlds, where most people seem to go between physical incarnations. And in the astral world, you have a chance to review everything that's happened and then go back again to continue where you left off. You generally don't have to go back and backslide unless, you know, there's a particular thing that you need to learn from having that experience.
Oh,
so,
good.
For example, in my own case, I was really bright and aware when I was just born, and I remembered quite a bit. I remembered what I wanted to accomplish in this lifetime, but after about 2.5 years, I guess I didn't know enough about, you know, fear and foggy consciousness and things, so I lost the clarity that I had for quite a while, but it was still in the back of my mind that I needed to find out going on in life and what was, behind the forms and the reality of the health information and consciousness and past lives and all that. I remembered that those were important and I wanted to know about them, but I didn't have the clarity. So for me, I experienced slipping back to that degree. But then when I went through a huge shock in about 2008, it just jarred me back into remembering everything that I'd forgotten, from the earlier part of my life, and then it continued from there. So you can go forward and back a little bit in my experience, but it's not like you'd have to start over every time or anything like that. You never make any progress that way.
Okay, well, that's encouraging. I was wondering about that because I was starting to get a little nervous about it, and then I realized I don't have to be anxious anymore at all because...
That's exactly right. In fact, the anxiousness slows you down.
Yeah.
And it just obscures what you could be learning otherwise. So it's not really good for anything.
Right, and plus...
Any efforts and lessons that you get now are never wasted.
Oh, okay, good. Lessons never wasted. I like that.
No. Even if you're a devoted follower of the bad guys and you're doing all kinds of terrible things, if you hear something really inspiring, it can sink in and plant a subconscious seed that will look for a way to grow later on. It won't be lost.
Cool.
It seems to be lost in the moment, like feet on barren ground or something like that. But consciousness is not like that. It can't be lost. If you've heard it, you can't unhear it.
Neat.
And if it's gone into your consciousness once, it's going to start being a force to change something that you'll experience in life to put you in a situation where you can make use of it. Everything is working for our benefit, even though it's not obvious.
No, no, it's not. But I noticed that now that I'm not as anxious, it's really calming me down. Like I was walking to the fruit stand last Sunday, and I thought, oh, well, the week before I was too late to get any good peaches, so I better hurry up because it's already 2 o'clock and they're going to be all gone. And all of a sudden I was walking along and I caught myself thinking that way, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I don't have to even do that. That's part of the old programming. That's not relative anymore.
But you're still either going to be in time or not in time. Worrying about it doesn't make you faster.
Well, I just looked at it like I'm beyond that now. I don't even have to worry about it because if it's there, it's supposed to be there, and if it's not, it's not. So I don't.
Your obligation is to pay attention so that you can learn the maximum benefit in every situation. But you never have to worry about anything anytime anymore.
So freeing and uplifting to not have to worry at all. It's just like, wow.
It's totally incredible. It's totally incredible. And people around you, when something really hard happens, they're going to think you're crazy.
Well, I noticed that I have to get out of my own way because I'm the one who's tripping myself up if I start falling back into it. But I had an experience this week where I felt like I was shedding a whole skin, like you know how a snake does it? Mm-hmm. The whole skin comes off and you walk up to it and you think it's a snake, but it's really just the skin of a snake. And I feel like I did that, and that the programming was in the skin that came off, a lot of it. I mean, I still have some, but I've lost a lot of it this week. I was amazed. People that get further along in this, they get to certain points where they just feel like sitting around laughing because they feel so good. And even if things don't seem to be going well, and again, everybody thinks they're crazy. It's like the fool on the hill. But there are, yogis up in the mountains in certain caves, and they're just sitting there giggling, floating about 6 or 12 inches off the floor, and they're not worried about anything. They're not eating and sleeping anymore, but they're in kind of a different state. But the same kind of feeling, and
happen once you start shedding some of those skins. You realize, wow, this is closer to my normal state. I feel really good. And you don't need a reason to feel good.
I know. I've been noticing it. It's like now I get what you said about I'm right where I'm supposed to be at the time I'm supposed to be there. Cause
beautiful.
It feels like that. It feels like, okay, so I don't have to be in a hurry to be over there because I'm here and this is where I'm supposed to be right now.
Yeah, you made it exactly on time, wherever you are.
Yeah, and also I'm realizing that I don't have to worry about being a victim or not being cared for adequately or like being abandoned or any of that insecurity stuff because I'm the one who takes care of myself now. So I don't have to worry about having inadequate care. If I do, then I just have to ask myself why I'm not caring for myself.
Yeah, just be a good parent, of yourself. It's part of the thing of where they say love yourself. That's part of it.
Right.
You're just pouring out this energy that's so positive with no justice, no excuse, no reason. It's just because that's what you do.
Yeah, so I don't even have to worry about the separations that go on because I'm getting more self-confident by loving myself more.
Yeah, exactly. Separation is probably one of the worst pains on this level, but eventually what you find out is it was never true.
Well, temporarily it might be, and I don't even have to stress over that because I am strong enough to just be my own person.
Yeah, but any person that you've been separated from, you can talk and communicate with them right now, anytime that you want to. And if your attention locks onto how they feel clearly, you're going to get through to them, even if it's subconscious, and then eventually you'll see them again.
Wow. Well, that would take a long wait sometimes, I think.
Maybe. But, if you stay in the present, then the long and short time periods aren't really an issue anymore.
Oh, okay. Well, as far as other people, I'm like what you were saying, no malice. I don't want to be enemies with anybody. I decided not to. So
good. Excellent. That's good for your physical health too.
Yeah, and if they want to be an adversary to me, that's their choice, but I won't give them that back.
Yeah. As long as you don't have that counterpart in yourself, then it doesn't have much effect anyway.
That's really, really empowering to not fall into.
It's pretty incredible. Yeah, we're way stronger than we've been told.
Yeah.
But it's not strength that comes out of force or gritting your teeth. It's a much more powerful strength that comes from total relaxation.
Okay. Well, I am doing more relaxing because, if there's something that has to do with trying to take care of myself that makes me tense, I just decided that I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it. Good.
Well, you get more inspiring ideas that way, too. Because worry blocks inspiration.
Oh. Yeah, I've gotten more inspiration. It just keeps coming. It's incredible. But I do have a question.
Yeah.
You know how you said sometimes we forget who we are and that we're trying to find ourselves. This theme kept coming up as an inspiration about this lost child theme. So I was wondering if you're familiar with it, and is that a common thing among people to feel like they're lost or that I don't know. Do you know anything about that theme, lost child?
Yeah, sometimes your mind will make an image or a story or an explanation for how you're feeling, and it'll show you that. That's where prophetic dreams come from and stuff like that sometimes. And, they can come from higher beings too, but your own your own mind can be a source of those kind of pictures just to try to communicate with you. And it feels like being a lost or abandoned child when you've lost touch with your own source. But then, we've got child and parent aspects both in us all the time. And we can turn the mind into an ally to help us remember and get back in connection. And at that point, there's no more need for that image, so it probably stops showing up.
Oh, so it's a mind thing.
I suspect it's the mind, yeah.
Okay.
And, the mind, you just have to continually give the mind a lot of comfort, like a 2-year-old kid. It's going to be dependent on that permanently. So as long as we need it, we need to keep giving it that.
I used to think that my mind was right, that it really, knew stuff, and that everything it was inspired to show me was true, and now I'm starting to really question what it comes up with. It's been psychologically completely unstable and insecure and worried and abandoned feeling because you didn't pay any attention to it, and all kinds of psychological problems on it anyway. Mainly obsessed with getting your attention and thinking that it can only do that by controlling you with bizarre programs. Wow, that's incredible to me. That is so incredible. What about negative stuff, negative vibrations or frequencies coming from other people? How personally do you counter those?
The only thing that I've found that's really helpful is when you remember we talked about scanning for the kind of frequency that you want. Mm-hmm. And the main one being that all-encompassing frequency that heals everything. This beautiful light coming in. If you're locked onto that, and then you start to become aware of an energy field around you that gets stronger and stronger. And if you just focus on feeding that, it gets to where nothing penetrates it. If you start to try to focus on an incoming negative energy and try to fight it, what you're actually doing is getting into resonance with the negative energy. And so that doesn't work for you.
Okay.
But if you stay focused on the positive one, it's like somebody wants to fight you and you're not in that antagonistic frame of mind. It's harder to start a fight that way. And on the frequency level, if you get focused enough on the incoming positive energy, not imagining it, but really tuning into it and feeling it coming in, and you just give that more and more attention, the negative frequencies can't even penetrate that.
Okay.
So they just stop. And they like other kinds of victims. They like people who are consciously making themselves unconscious. Like if they have the habit of getting drunk all the time or getting wrapped up in some other drug, whether it's cigarettes or opium or heroin or even marijuana, in my opinion. And I know a lot of people think marijuana is wonderful, but I think it lowers consciousness. And anything that you do activity-wise or drug-wise that makes you less sharply conscious makes you a more appealing target for negative entities to intrude.
Okay.
And that's all real. I mean, possession is real and all that stuff.
Okay. What about when you say not lowering consciousness? Does that mean frequencies? So you just would instead focus on a higher frequency, and that takes care of not lowering consciousness?
Well, yeah. It's just that you want to be aware of not doing anything physically that counteracts that. For example, just the easiest example, if you're going to be taking drugs that fog your mind up, then you can be trying to focus on high frequencies all the time. It's going to be much harder.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. What makes sense? Well,
you don't want to physically interfere with your brain function.
Right. Well, I noticed I did get more and more inspiration and receptiveness to the good frequencies as I started following the diet and the grounding in the sun and the exercise and all of that.
Exactly. Those are big helping factors. If you're eating a box of donuts every day and have a lot of processed food and stuff like that, and then you try to focus on a high frequency, it's much, much harder to do.
Right. So loving myself is the first step to loving the people that are harder to love. I think I noticed a way to maybe do that was I used to look outside myself most of the time, hardly ever in, and I didn't know what you meant by looking inside myself for a long, long time, and I'm just now finally realizing what that means and how to, do that. And so I'm thinking if I start looking at somebody else and critiquing them if they're overweight or whatever the thing is that I'm looking with that my mind is attracting me toward, I could just remember to only give when I look out, and then if I want to critique, I have to look in. So I'm using that as a tool now.
And also monitor what you're doing, your thoughts and your feelings. And they're programs. They're all programs. So if you're monitoring them and you see anything that's going to be counterproductive, then you want to be in touch with your mind right away and talk about programs to run.
Stop them, nip them in the bud, in other words.
Yeah, just you don't try to stop them. You try to interest mind in something more fun.
Okay, distract.
Yeah, distract into something good.
Okay.
In other words, that's really great that you're playing with that cyanide, thinking about drinking it, but I have something that tastes so much better over here. Why don't you run over here and try this? And it forgets all about the negative stuff.
That's great. Well,
you don't have to get into a big fight about the poison that way.
I was having a hard time trying to quickly think of something to use to fill in the gap to not keep going with the negative route, and then something showed up that gave me an answer on how to do it. It was really neat. I was out milking the goats, and I was just standing there filling their water bucket or whatever, and I was looking out in the field beyond their fence, and there was a whole bunch of dragonflies just fluttering around out there, and I just started feeling their frequencies really strong,
dragonflies are beautiful, yeah.
They had such high frequency. They were incredible. And so
I've had them come over and land on me when I'm focused on them. They're pretty amazing.
Yeah, they are. And I got lifted up in my frequency of myself just by really focusing on them flying. I
know. And we're trained that all these other life forms are these low forms, Who cares if they live or die? They're not worth anything. If you want to kill them and eat them, or just kill them and throw them away, it's no big deal. And it's hiding what you're talking about as the beginning there. If you start to become aware of these other forms, dragonflies or trees or even stones, they have the ability to communicate, and they notice instantly when you notice them.
When you what?
When you notice them.
Oh, yeah. Right. And so I was paying a special attention to dragonflies all week, and it kept happening, and they kept showing up, and it was like they were sent there just for me. And so I went to the lake on my way back from buying some goat food, and I jumped in the lake, and I was laying in the sun trying to dry off, and this dragonfly came up and landed on a log right next to me. And I started talking to it, and it answered me. It was so neat.
Yeah, this is what's going to get you hauled away to a crazy place, but you don't tell fortunately, it's only you and me on the phone right now, so I'm sure nobody else notices anything. But I'm enjoying the same kind of experience all the time. I was not at a lake, but at a river in the last week. And there were dragonflies all over the place, as well as birds. And I had, I was communicating with these beings and with the trees there, and it was just so obvious, the response. And it turns out that not only are you not crazy, but the people that don't get to experience this are the ones that are temporarily, blinded to some of it. When you start becoming aware of the depth of experience that is available every second, I mean, it's just like living in magic. It's amazing.
It is. So I asked her how to help me to heal the people that are working for the controllers that maybe are in a job that they don't realize is harmful or whatever. So I said, well, can you show me, you're so strong with your vibes, can you show me how to get those vibes over to those people? And so it did. It was so cool. It lifted its tail up about at an angle, and then I looked really close at it, and it had a little tuning fork on the end of its tail, and it pointed it right to the sun. It was like, she's trying to show me how to do it.
Well, what we're doing here, hopefully, at least, maybe there's much more, but what I see is we're assembling kind of a loosely knit group of people who are individually gradually opening up to things they couldn't imagine before. And it leads to a point where, just like the symbol of the dragonfly pointed toward the sun, I really think we have the power to terraform the energy atmosphere of this planet so that it's not conducive to darkness anymore. I think we can do that, and I think that's the weak point of the negative power structure. And they're just hoping none of us can imagine that, let alone do it. But I think we can. And I don't think it's going to take very many of us.
Well, even if it wasn't humans just doing it, if the humans got together with all the little nature animals and we all did it together, I bet we could do it.
Yeah, I think so too. There's a lot of help there. It's just like in the movie Avatar, when in the end, it's not fighting and killing like that, but in the end, all of the animals and nature beings and everything came and helped the good guys to get rid of the guys that were blowing up the planet and everything. Everything is, in the movies, everything's always violence and killing, and the reality is not like that. But the idea of nature helping, I think it's ready to help us mostly on levels we don't even see anytime. And it's just waiting to see what we want to do.
That's so neat. We have all these little helpers, just like little angels, but you can see them. They're just flying around.
Yeah, real angels. I mean, in the Essene Gospel book, it's talking about the angel of water, and like when you were going into the lake, you would be interacting with that one, and air and sunlight and all these other ones. They're just given like servants to us. They're totally amazing.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about unity consciousness a lot lately, and I'm not sure what that looks like. I know that we're trying to join everybody's well-wishing together. How do you describe what we're looking at? I mean, can you describe what it's going to look like when we get there?
Well, I know we're not going to have to do it with our regular intellectual level, because if you're tied in to the frequency coming from your source, and the other people are too, you're automatically connected. You don't have to do anything special.
Oh, so the whole point is just everybody connecting to source, and then it just happens automatic, and we don't have to try to connect to other people? Yeah,
then to the degree that we're able to do that, it's going to be that original spirit is going to be doing it through us. We just get to watch and go along for the ride.
Okay, as long as we're allowing that flow to happen, then we don't have to make any effort to try to unite with the consciousness of others?
You just have to stay in harmony with it. And you will become aware of the other people doing the same thing.
Okay, and then everybody gets along, right?
Everybody's in total harmony that way.
Is that like saying everybody's loving each other? Would that be correct?
Yeah, I mean, these words are really inadequate, because love has a million different meanings, and all the rest of the stuff does too, but it's going to feel very good. So everything that we want to happen in harmony with the other people who are doing it and all that, it all comes down to make sure you do it in yourself. And as you get to each stage, you'll become aware of other people that are working on it with you.
Neat.
It's just like as your normal abilities open up, you can glance at somebody and you'll know what they're thinking and feeling without having to do anything, because you get into harmony with, what's supporting them as well, even if they don't know it.
Oh. And you don't even have to say anything, right?
No.
Wow.
None of this is visible to the people that don't have the awareness developed yet. So other than the crazy people who go, and be radio hosts talking about it openly, this is the kind of stuff that you can do and nobody would ever notice. Except you're going to notice that the effects change, and they're going to notice that.
Right. And they'll be more attracted to the people that are vibrating with the higher frequencies, right?
It's resonance. It encourages everybody else. It interests them. And all the minds are tied together. So if your mind gets really focused and directed in a good direction, then its resonance becomes stronger than people who are scattered. And it starts affecting them even if they don't know what's going on.
Oh, so that's an automatic? The minds just start tying together?
Yeah, you get your mind really in harmony with that incoming energy, and in a good direction more and more of the time. The resonance gets stronger. It's like the note that a musical instrument is playing gets louder. And it's on a non-audible level, but other minds are affected by it.
Oh, neat. Okay. Well, that's a lot of questions, and you did answer them all really well. So I appreciate that.
We're all working on the same stuff now. So
yeah.
It's a great privilege for me to be in touch with other people who are having an interest in this sort of thing.
So we don't even have to even know who all is working on it. We just have to be with Source.
No.
Source does all the stitching together.
At a certain point, you're going to see their image right in front of your face.
What do you mean? I don't understand that.
you're going to, if it's another person in a physical body who's doing this somewhere in the world, and you get to a certain point of harmonics, you're going to see them like you were sitting right in front of them.
Oh, even if we never knew them before?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Sometimes I get
never knowing somebody before doesn't really have that much meaning, because we all came from the same source. So, in a way, we know everybody.
Wow. I know that's interesting, because sometimes I've seen faces of people that I've never met before or seen on TV before or anything. But they look like a specific face of a person that I've never known. It's really strange.
Yeah, well, you don't remember knowing them, but that may not be the case.
Oh.
Most of our even most of our human friends we don't remember at all.
Wow. That's interesting. Well, I am eating less now. I've noticed that as I'm eating more of the fresh and alive, organic raw, I don't eat as much. It took a while.
The requirements are completely different. I'm finding the same thing.
Oh, neat. Okay, well, thank you. And I hope that everything goes well with Blog Talk and all the problems get ironed out.
Yeah, me too. Let's just put good energy into it. So have a good rest of the weekend, too.
Okay, you too. Bye.
Actually, well, bye. Okay, so I think you guys can all still hear me. I just had a couple of quick things, and then, we got to wrap it up because we got 5 minutes to when we get shut down here. And Tom DeWeese is a great guest. It's going to be on tomorrow night's show. I invite everybody And that's the educational one. We talk about Agenda 21 with him and different things like that. I think that you'll like it. That's at the same time as tonight's show. I still want to invite all the global rulers to be open to what we're sharing with them, because we're not considering them enemies, and I just want to give them things of value. So that's what this show is about. It's not just for the good guys or, you know, a certain group or a certain point of view or something. It's for everybody, because the bad guys are not in touch with themselves either. They're really sure they are, but they're not. And they have a chance to turn things in their great benefit right now. And I want them to benefit as much as possible. So stay in touch, you guys, and keep listening. Let us get on the air, if you will, because it's not just for the other people, it's for you. Let me see what else. Remember to go to the website. We're still putting up articles and videos that are educational on LostArtsRadio.com. The other site that I mentioned earlier in the program, Lost Arts Research Institute.org, is our nonprofit. And that's the one that will run, build, and operate the school and the other larger projects that we'll be doing later, assuming that we manage to get the funding in that's clean to do all that. And if you want to help on even a smaller level, we have donate buttons on both of those websites, LostArtsRadio.com and LostArtsResearchInstitute.org. We definitely still need that help, and if you can help us, that would be great. If you don't have money or you're struggling for your own sustenance, please don't donate anything at all except good wishes and telling people about the show. There's a new Facebook group that Emily started called Lost Arts Radio on Facebook, and there's a forum on LostArtsRadio.com. It looks like Emily is on, and let me try and talk to her for a minute. We've got about a minute left. Hey, Emily, what's going on? Nice to see you again.
Oh, I just happened to get off work early tonight. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm driving.
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Oh, great. Well, I just wanted to show appreciation for the conversations. I didn't get to hear all of it, but I was really enjoying what you and Dee were talking about, especially the dragonflies.
Oh, yeah, those were neat. All right. We both had dragonfly experiences this week.
Yeah. I feel kind of left out. I haven't had quite that level of experience yet, but I'm still working on it. I did go hiking with some friends, the Little Grand Canyon in Illinois. I was really appreciating the centipedes. Just every few inches out in that area. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm listening to you. I want to hear what you're saying. We have about 3 minutes, so tell me everything if you can.
Oh, sure. Yeah, in this area, it's just very moist, and, you know, of course, in the forest, a lot more rotting material, and just there's such a stark difference between, like, say, the more cultivated areas that we live in, even in the rural parts, and out here, it's just like there's this really profound energy, and like I said, centipedes every few inches. Just I've never seen anything like it.
Wow. Yeah, the life energy in forests and places like that is wonderful, and you can smell it in the air. The actual physical composition of the air there is different, and the electrical atmosphere of the trees just changes everything too.
Mm-hmm. I could definitely feel that. It was very refreshing. I didn't want to leave. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sounds wonderful. Anybody that can get out into nature a little bit should definitely try to do it.
Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to encourage everyone to start up conversations in the Facebook forum. I've been feeling a little lonely there.
Yeah.
But I'll just
definitely. How do we get people willing to go there and try it out? I mean, it's a fantastic thing that you started on. You want to tell them how to find it in case they don't know?
Oh, sure. You can just type in Lost Arts Radio into the Facebook search engine and click the group category. You can find it easily. I think we have quite a few people viewing them, but there's not too many chiming in yet on the conversation. So I'll keep digging for some really good topics for us.
Okay. All right. Yeah, thank you. I'll try to mention it more often, too. So we're about out of time, but hopefully maybe you can call in a little bit earlier next time. It's nice to talk to you, and everybody should know I'm reachable by email too. And hope everybody has a great week, and come listen tomorrow night if you can. And
great.
we'll talk to you again soon. Okay. So have a good night, Emma.
Talk soon. Bye.